Hello guys, open your student book on page 112. Okay, so today we are on our lesson, The Real World. So let's read the title. So we have Ice Water Diver. So what's the meaning of diving? Let's look at the picture. She is a diver. So she swims and she goes under the sea. But she goes under the sea in ice water, right? So let's read some information about this girl, right? Rhian Waller is a National Geographic explorer. She teaches at the Darling Marine Center in the United States. So that means that she's a teacher. She studies animals that live in extreme places. She's very interested in corals and often has to dive in cold water to study them. So, would you like to swim in cold water? Me, no. Okay, let's read a little bit more about her. So, Rhian Waller's passion is to understand how animals get to live in and survive in extreme conditions in spite of climate change and negative impact of humans. She says deep sea ecosystems affect everything, even when they are kilometers below the water's surface. Equally important, she wants people to know that we affect their environments too, like the foil balloon she found in a coral reef 3,000 meters below the surface. So imagine, one day she was diving and suddenly she found a balloon, maybe a birthday balloon or something like that. But she found that balloon 3,000 meters below the surface. She found that balloon in the sea. So she is very worried about the impact of humans in the environment, right? Okay, so let's see. What are we going to do on the first exercise? On the first exercise, we have circle the correct answers. So number 1 says, Waller is a scientist or is a diving instructor. Number 2, she studied corals on video screens because they are small or hard to reach. Number 3, it is difficult to dive in Alaska because it's very cold or because there are dangerous animals. So I'm going to play the audio and you're going to circle the correct answer, right? So let me play the audio.
Unit 11, Track 2-40.
Rhian Waller is a scientist studying deep-sea corals. For 10 years, she studied these corals on video screens because they live in deep water, sometimes even 1,000 meters deep. But recently, she found some of these deep-sea corals in Alaska, in water only 20 meters deep. Waller learned to dive so she could study the corals up close. But in Alaska, the water is dangerously cold. 5 minutes after being in the water, you can't feel your head and hands, she says. On one dive, it was very hard to see. She was swimming with her partner. She was holding on to her partner's air tank when she let go for a second. He was gone, she says. Suddenly, I couldn't see anything. The wall, my hands, my feet. I had to look for the bubbles to find the way up. But is it worth the risk? Absolutely. It's hard to describe the feeling, she says. Now she can swim near the corals, see them, and touch them.
Okay, guys, let's check our answers. So, number 1 says, Waller is a scientist or diving instructor. Very good. So, Waller is a scientist. Number 2, she studied corals on video screens because they are small or hard to teach. Because they are hard to teach, right? Number 3, it's difficult to dive in Alaska because it's very cold or there are dangerous animals. Because it's very cold, right? Now, let's go to the next exercise. In the next exercise, we are going to listen again and we're going to complete the sentences. We have used the correct forms of the words in the box. So here in the box, we have some words, right? So we have swim, look, dark, touch, dangerous, right? So we are going to write these words on the lines, right? But in some cases, especially with the verbs swim, look, and touch, we have to change the form, right? So you have to pay attention to the correct form of the word to write it on the line. For example, we have here, she was when she got lost. So she was, what was she doing? We need here a verb with ing, right? So pay attention to the form of the words and complete it, right? Let me play the audio again.
Unit 11, Track 2-40.
Rhian Waller is a scientist studying deep-sea corals. For 10 years, she studied these corals on video screens because they live in deep water, sometimes even 1,000 meters deep. But recently, she found some of these deep-sea corals in Alaska, in water only 20 meters deep. Waller learned to dive so she could study the corals up close. But in Alaska, the water is dangerously cold. 5 minutes after being in the water, you can't feel your head and hands, she says. On one dive, it was very hard to see. She was swimming with her partner. She was holding on to her partner's air tank when she let go for a second. He was gone, she says. Suddenly, I couldn't see anything. The wall, my hands, my feet. I had to look for the bubbles to find the way up. But is it worth the risk? Absolutely. It's hard to describe the feeling, she says. Now she can swim near the corals, see them, and touch them.
Okay, so let's check our answers, right? If you see, some of the words has changed. For example, we just have look, and the correct answer is had to look. We just have swim, and now we have swimming, right? So let's see. Number 1 says, one of Waller's dive, it was very good. It was very dark. She was swimming when she got lost. She had to look for the bubbles to find her way up. It was a dangerous experience, but she doesn't mind the risk. Now she can see the corals up close and touch them, right? Ready? Okay, so now let's go to the next page. So what are we going to do on the next exercise? On the next exercise, we have a pronunciation exercise, right? So we have ending blends, sk, st, nk, nt. Okay, so we are going to listen to the sound of those syllables. So we have listen and repeat. I'm going to play the audio and you're going to repeat these words, right? Let's listen.
Unit 11, Track 2-41. 1,
Risk.
2,
Think.
3,
Lost.
4,
Sank.
5,
Accident.
Okay, guys, so we have risk, think, lost, sank, accident. Okay, so now we're going to listen another audio and we're going to circle the sounds you hear. So if you remember, we are going to listen some words and we are going to circle the last sound that we heard. For example, we have number 1, nt, nk. So we're going to listen a word and you're going to circle the correct ending of that word, right? Pay attention to the numbers, right? So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So let me play the audio and pay a lot of attention to circle.
Unit 11, Track 2-42. 1,
Front,
2,
last,
3,
ask,
4,
tank,
5,
test,
6,
ant,
Okay, so according to the listening, let's check our answers. So in number 1, the first word was front, right? So the ending of front is this one, right? Number 2, the second word was last. So the ending is st, right? Number 3, ask. Ask is this ending. Number 4, tank. So we have this one. Number 5, test. And number 6, ant. So we have this one, right? Now, in the next part, we have work with the partner and take turns to read the words in the box. So we are going to read them alone, right? So repeat. Task, frank, first, apartment, desk, bank. Okay, so now in this part, we have a question. Do you know? So we have corals are a type of letter A, plant, letter B, animal, letter C, rock. So circle the answer that you think that is the right answer. Ready? Okay, so now let's check our answer. We have corals are invertebrate organisms whose skeletons are stone-like, horny or leathery. Although there are about 2,300 species of corals, stony corals are the most familiar and include brain coral, mushroom coral, star coral, and staghorn coral. Stony corals are also the most widely distributed because they exist in all oceans, regardless of depth. While living, stony corals have a yellow, brown, or olive tint to them, but when they die, they are always white. So we have here, corals are invertebrate organisms. So what does it mean? It means that corals are a type of animal, right? So now, let's go to the last exercise of this part of the class. So we have communication. Play a game. Work in two groups. Pick an action from each column below, form sentences, and take turns to read it to the other group. The other group has to act out your group's description at your own actions. What are we going to do in this case? Because we don't have another partner, we are going to write that sentences in your notebook. If you notice, we have two columns, okay? So everybody take out your notebooks. So we have some verbs in the first column. We have dance, jump, run, sing, play the guitar, use the computer. In the second column, we have stand up, sneeze, laugh, shout, fall asleep, turn around. So we're going to match those verbs to form sentences about the past. So we are going to talk about interrupted actions. Here we have an example with dance and stand up. Sally was dancing when Alex stood up. So what does it mean? That first Sally was dancing and then Alex stood up. This column is the first action and this column is the action that interrupt. What does it mean? That this column it's going to be in past continuous and this column it's going to be in simple past, right? So we are going to use in the sentence was or were dancing, was or were jumping, was or were running, was or were singing, was or were playing the guitar, was or were using the computer. And this column, we're going to use it in past. Stood up, sneezed, laughed, shouted, fell asleep, turned it around, right? Here we have another example. Grace and Tom were jumping when Mason sneezed, right? Maybe you can write in your notebook, I was playing the guitar when I fell asleep. Ready? Okay, so write those sentences in your notebook. When you finish, go to the next video, right? Bye-bye.